right, so hello everybody. My name is Camille Roos, and I'm an artist living in the Berkshires. I live in Beckett with my family in a little farmhouse. And Beckett and this farmhouse was the place where I made the majority of these paintings. For the last 10 years, I've been painting from my kitchen table, very humbly, but in many ways, thanks to the pandemic, I've been able to produce a huge amount of work, which gave me the credentials to move into a studio space. So I'm currently renting a studio in Housatonic at Muse Center for Integrated Craft, which is amazing because I'm surrounded by artists for the first time since college, and I feel like I'm in great company. So I will tell you a bit about my practice and what got me interested in art, how long I've been making for, how my practice has changed over the years, because it certainly has. I didn't start out making sort of dreamy atmospheric images like you see before you today. I originally started making very realist portraits and images of people. That's where my art practice really began as in middle school and high school. I loved drawing my friends and my family. And I got pretty good at realistic drawing and figures, and the human body, when I went to Simon's Rock and pursued liberal arts education and started reading a lot of poetry and political studies and literature from around the world. And I started really feeling the richness of different forms of expression. I started kind of moving into the back door of my imagination and seeing and sensing that there's more to creatively portray than just what you see. And so that began what has since been a lifelong journey of trying to translate or convey the imaginary and the sensory world. So as I paint and produce work, it is at this point as much of an improvisation as a discovery. So where you see forms like this image of a face, this is a portrait that became my mother, actually, and this image of a woman, and there's a woman there. None of them started as the figure themselves, but rather figures may emerge from my paintings as part of the discovery of making them. So to go back to my practice and how I practice art making, I will usually sort of feel in my body what color wants to come forth or what medium I may want to use. And I have a whole bunch of different mediums at home. I have crayons, watercolors, pencils, markers, charcoal, acrylic paints, gouache paints. I have a wide selection. So I'll move towards a material and a background. I've worked on cardboard, wood, found objects, as well as canvases. And as I develop my practice, I'm moving more towards conventional canvases. But a lot of my art started on household objects. So I'll think, like, what kind of color, what kind of texture, what kind of feelings do I want to portray in a given piece? And I'll let one line or one color sort of inoculate the piece, and then I move from there. And my process is very akin to jazz music, like one stroke will lead to the next, to the next, to the next. And then suddenly there's a mad symphony of things happening in the painting that it's my job as the artist to bring into balance or harmony in some way. So that is a little bit about my process. What I've learned by way of making art like this is that by the time a piece is complete or has reached a state of harmony, and that's what I would consider reaching completion, I end up seeing in the piece kind of a mirror or a reflection of something that it feels like my spirit or my heart needs to see. So it's almost as though the art pieces that I make reflect core information to me that I wouldn't otherwise have access to. So they're kind of almost a doorway to myself or a mirror to my inner world. And in that way, they become conversations. So let's see. I recently became a faculty artist at Berkshire Art Center. Over the years, I have 2 small children. I've taught after-school programs and summer camps, some of which have been arts related, but my arts practice otherwise was more of kind of a secret or personal hobby. These days, though, I'm hoping to bring people into the practice of having this intuitive relationship to the shapes that they make and discovering what is their natural form and flow as artists. Maybe liberating them from the pressure of feeling like art has to look a certain way or be perfect, so that they can play with materials and musically jam with their art pieces, and have the same experience that I do, which is, seeing and learning something new about themselves at the end of the piece. So I've been really working on developing art programs where I can bring people into that more intuitive process of relating to art conversationally. I am going to an artist in residence program in May, which is very exciting to me. Like I said, I have been making art from my kitchen table for the last 10 years while mothering my 2 children. And I only recently started having a studio. And the fact that I'm going to a whole artist in residence program in Portugal, of all places, it's going to be the first time that I've been away from my children and my home and really committing to my art in 12 years. So I'm really excited to see what happens to the pieces I produce when I am fully committed to the creative process. So let's see, maybe I can start talking about some of the pieces and sharing what I see in them or what I feel that they mean. We'll start over here with this one, because it came to my attention that some people don't see what I see in the paintings. And this, I'm curious if you can see that there is a deer sleeping. So it's a sleeping deer, kind of surrounded by like flora and fauna from the forest. And this painting began with the sleeping body of a deer, and then I was adding different layers of stroke and color to cover the deer and make it more camouflaged as it would be in a forest setting. So this is kind of a good example of sometimes in my art there's different layers and you may see different things from different angles. That's something that I really like to play with as far as, textures, depth, and dimension. And I would love it if my art can be like something that shifts and moves based on your how you look at it. These pieces, likewise, were created. I made 4 of these at the same time, and I'll often do that with my work, is I will kind of spread out multiple pieces of material, and then I work on many at once, and that helps me. It helps me loosen my form, actually. It helps me think less, and that's oftentimes what I'm trying to do most is, as an artist, is like get out of my own way and not think about it so that I don't correct myself and edit and kind of stop things short or overthink a piece. So this is an example of that, where I, start with a line and shape and then just really like move from piece to piece and kind of note like, ooh, it needs a little bit of red or blue or some brown, or let's add some thinner threads of color, and then at the end it's just, once it feels balanced, that's it. So it ended up kind of becoming almost like this wild bouquet, which I really enjoy. This piece here is an example of one of the found object that I used. This was a painting from my grandmother's house. Behind this canvas was a conventional portrait of a man reading a newspaper, and under here it says Nouvelles du matin, which is news of the morning. But I decided to paint over that canvas and make the news of the morning instead. I tried to sort of represent like the sunlight cascading across a mountain. So the news of the morning more being like the way that sun disperses across a hillscape. And living in Beckett, I'm surrounded by hills. So I have the great pleasure and fortune of seeing sun travel over the mountainside. So I tried to convey that as best I could, imperfectly, of course. This painting is on a wrapping paper tube and is another example of like, I kind of started with like, a sharp line, and like building out of that line, discovered that it was a tiger and a woman kind of at the beach. And then I drew this big tiger lily, like an umbrella providing shade for her. And so this is also like, maybe you can hear it in the way that I'm describing, but I have so much fun playing with the images and playing with my imagination and sort of telling a story from a piece. So when I do let myself make a semi-realistic image, such as a tiger or a woman wearing a beach hat, it's just so fun for me because like a story emerges and it just lights up my inner child. So yeah, those are the kind of forms, but then you'll notice that I'm using different kinds of paints. Like this is tempera, and then there's some pastel here and little traces of colored pencil. And if you look closely at the painting, there's quite a few different textures going on that again add to this these different dimensional layers of the piece. Now, these 3 are a bit more conventionally abstract, and yet still following the same principles that I described earlier of improvisation and textural exploration. These you'll see, and this is an element in a number of my paintings, not too many here, but others that I have at home, where I'll make little tiny marks. And those marks to me, in my artist's mind or in the back of my head, stand for almost a symbolic language, like a form of hieroglyphs that I will occasionally mark my paintings with this like made up alphabet of sorts, and it just brings a different layer of symbol and meaning because, like I said, oftentimes when I'm making art, it's this conversation. It's this conversation with materials, but it's also really a conversation with my heart and with my spirit, and almost as a form of prayer. Like I'll often kind of as I'm painting, be thinking about some element of harmony or peace or love. And so these symbols and these little markings of hieroglyphic alphabet are my attempt to maybe tattoo my paintings with a little bit more specific meaning, although it's likewise wordless. This painting here was made in 2018, and it was one of 4 paintings of this similar style. They were, different body positions and different sizes, but this was actually what really kind of sparked my painting process again and my return to the arts after, the heavy years of early childhood for my 2 children. And this is another example, this smaller painting of like secret figures. So kind of like the deer. I'm curious if you guys noticed that there is a man here with vines sort of growing up his body. And then here there's a blue-headed woman like holding out her arm, which like almost has like these feathered plumes coming down, and the woman, the piece is titled Forgiveness, but it's like the woman is almost like laying a blessing upon the feet of this man who doesn't even necessarily notice that she's there. But this is an example of, some people have seen this and they didn't see in any way the figures. To me, these people are quite obvious, but I suppose they're not to everyone. So I'm curious, do you see like the eyes, the mouth? This is the shoulder. These are kind of the legs like standing to the side. And then this is the woman's face and her hairdo and kind of dress or gown. So I'm just curious if you can see that. These are also a little bit, this is an older piece too. I call it Roses Were Strown. So like the ethos behind it is roses strewn across a field or a bed or a sky. So these are, roses. And then these 2 were quite interesting for me to make. This has a number of different materials in it too. There's gouache paint, there's spray paint. You might be able to see kind of in the background, these 2 pieces started as like this kind of, I brought them outside and I just like spray painted them with a bunch of different colors. And then I added different overlays of color on top. This paler green color is milk paint, which is a form of like a chalky sort of house paint. And then likewise, as I was doing that, I noticed that there were beings that wanted to come forward. And so there's a woman here and a man here, and they have wings, and they're both, she's sort of actively receiving with her hands, and then this figure is more like emanating or giving out light in the form of these yellow paint strokes, and they are like protected or guided by these frames, like these shape frames. So to me, these 2 images are much more kind of in the realm of like healing, representing healing. And these 2, and I have another one here, and there's another very large version of these paintings. Are more of kind of where I'm heading right now as an artist. These are the most recent, where I am just fully lending myself to formlessness and the exploration of texture through different brushes and again different materials. So this has oil pastel, conventional house paint, flash paint, which is a more opaque acrylic, and then I'm continuously playing with the layers. So that's a bit about the pieces that surround me. And I also write quite a bit. I write poetry and story. I like to write pieces that I like to write similar in the way that I paint, in that I will kind of hear something and then I want to catch it and capture it and put it into words. And so that's often where my stories come from, is that way, like catching fish in the sky. And my poetry comes through that way too. Some of my poems are very short and brief, and you can find a number of those online on my website, some of the shorter pieces. And then I also will write rather complex essays, usually on the topics of love and philosophy and the dream world. So these are the subjects that I'm most interested in, are dream, our relationship to each other, our relationship to Earth, and our relationship to ourself across all time. So I will share with you some pieces of writing that I made, and I chose pieces today that have the most to do with my art practice, and because I'm here talking about my paintings. So yeah, this one I think I'll start with, because I feel that this poem reflects a bit about how I make, and it's called The Moon. So this is how it goes. I radiate, I retract, I shield, I draw forth, I protect, I destroy, I cleanse, I undo, I reform, I revise, I ground down, I emit. I am fluid, things move through me. I am perpetually changing form. I am ideas, visions, messages. I am emotions, sensations, feedback. I am a signal. Accepting this about myself, I am free. I am free to ellipse myself. You will not see me in full. You will see an aspect of me, because I am not one thing. I am shaped by my perceiver. I give shape to my surroundings. I respond. My pronouns are you, yours, not because I am selfless, but because I am placed here temporarily to shine a mirror to the sky, as your strange little sister, the moon. This is an older piece, a simple and short piece, and we can end here because we only have a few more minutes. But this piece is called Reciprocal Relations with an Altar, because my place of creation is also kind of a sacred place that I enter in order to understand more about the world, or the unseen, or the intangible, or the dream that lives within me. And so this was my first kind of attempt at understanding, what is this about? Like, why am I creating at all? And what is my relationship to art? So this poem came forth from that place. My body is an altar. My home is an altar. My family is an altar. On this altar, I make circles of light. I wash and rearrange. I love by placing my attention on this altar I return to, adding and renewing, communicating with each day. The altar is physical. It physically exists in space. The altar is temporal. It changes with developments native to time. The altar is otherworldly. It relates to the ancestors of my lineage, land, and the story of my belonging here. In tribute, the altar is given life by the intentions I speak unto it, breathe onto it, touch into being. In reciprocity, The altar gives my body, my home, and my family protection, a square where I become more aware of my personal evolution in relationship to objects, time, and spirit. So that's all that I'd like to share with you. If you would like to follow me, you can find my website at camilleroos.com, one word, and you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Creative Femina, which is spelled CRTVFMNA. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you can take something with you from this talk and bring it home. Thank you.